Welcome to Conversations with Colie, where we have conversations about subjects we think about but often don't speak about. My name is Nicole Miller, and I'm the author of this book series, A through Z, Guide to Raising a Good Human, a series I wrote to help in the communication process. Welcome back to Conversations with Colie. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Naomi Giedel, life purpose and transition coach. Welcome, Naomi.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our talk.
Yeah, me too. So first we're going to do an icebreaker. It's the zombie apocalypse, and you're under attack, but you have no weapons. What do you do to save yourself?
Good question. What popped into my head was just friendly zombies. So I would maybe do a dance party to get them distracted, and then try to sneak away or something, get them occupied with something else.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's smart. I'm going to hang out with you during the zombie apocalypse. So tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Naomi, and currently I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. Grew up in Colorado for the most part, but have lived. I also lived in Japan for a while and Indonesia for a while, so I have that international expat experience. I have been a teacher for many years, and I also have moved into like wellness situation, like helping people with physical fitness throughout the years, and now I'm also helping people with life purpose and transitions in life. I really like to work with creatives who have like ideas on their heart and mind, but then sometimes get confused with where to start or self-doubt or confidence, those kind of things. And so I really like to help people bring those ideas to life through the support and encouragement that I know is my purpose. I like to be an aunt to 9 nieces and nephews, and I really enjoy adventure and creativity. So that's what you can find me doing in my free time.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Are you a product of divorce? Were your parents, did they have a lasting marriage, or did they end up divorcing when you were younger?
So my parents are still together. I think they're on 52 years together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I guess 2 summers ago, I got to go back and celebrate their 50th anniversary with them. So, yeah.
Nice. So tell us about your choice to be single.
That's an interesting question because it is, I guess, a choice, but it's also not a choice I like fully made myself. Like I always thought and want to be in a committed relationship. But that's just kind of hasn't worked out for me as far as like some people will say, well, you've been single so long, so are you picky? Are you,
right,
that kind of stuff. But I also feel like I've been discerning, or maybe timing hasn't worked out. I mean, I've liked people in the past and they haven't liked me back, or
right.
when I talk to friends, they're like, well, he really liked you. And I was like, no, he didn't. So maybe just me not being aware, of different things.
Yeah.
And so, so I feel like, looking back, and I'm 46, I'm not afraid to share that. Kind of just like looking back, like, yeah, how did I get to this space and place of living a single life?
Right.
I feel like for most of the times I have been content in my singleness, um like it's always just been okay, but I've also had the hope of being in a relationship and just hoping that a nice person would come about that would, complement where I was going, and be supportive of each other as we journeyed together. So,
Yeah.
if I answer that.
Yeah. Do you find that when you start dating someone that maybe they're not always as supportive because you're an outgoing person and you kind of like have that adventure mind? Do you think that that is almost like a roadblock?
I don't think so. It's not like I date a lot.
Right.
Like, I don't. And so it's hard to say specifically because I don't have maybe that track record.
Right.
But the people I have been with or tried to start something with, I don't know what it is,
Hmm.
honestly. I think it
Yeah.
might just be like I know in my 30s, I dated people that we weren't in the same location. And I know like building career and stuff is important in your 30s. And so maybe part of that situation was, oh, how much do I like this person to adjust my life, you
Right.
know? And so
Right.
kind of like some of those things of, am I ready for that big adjustment when I'm settled where I'm at, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and do I want to give up the community that I built or my job? And so I think those were some of the questions that those relationships had in their 30s. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I don't want to be with anybody that I want to stifle. Like I want them to do what they want to do and be
Yeah.
supportive of that. And I would like the same as well. And so
Exactly.
I
And
think,
I think nowadays it's hard to find someone who what I know from my experience. When I get in a relationship, one person wants to be the stifler, like you can't, you need to stay here and do this for me. I can do what I want and don't say a word about it. That's been my
mhm,
experience. And so it's hard to find someone who's going to allow you to grow and you allow them to grow together. So,
right.
maybe that's a factor. It's hard to
Yeah.
find people like that.
Yeah.
So, why do you think we view choosing or being thoughtful before jumping into a marriage as a negative thing? Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because sometimes I think we are conditioned or programmed to think like we have to get married. I'm X amount age old. I need to get married. So, why do you think that we as a society view choosing or being thoughtful before jumping into a marriage is a negative thing?
I mean, that's just the culture we live in, right? Partnered is elevated. Um, in all areas, even to our tax codes, right?
Yeah,
And
and
I
I
even
have
saw
questions
recent
on that because I read up on this. This is like a huge thing, especially during the pandemic, is single shaming people,
mm, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's like a whole thing. And it's even our own government in a way, or our insurance companies that give perks to people because they're married, but they don't give perks to people who choose or are single.
right, right. Yeah, I think it's a society thing, and I grew up, in the Christian community, so it's also preached there, like, together is better, and I do see that, but then I also think it puts a unrealistic pressure on making that happen at all costs, and so
Mm-hmm.
people do get into relationship where they know it's not right, but they'll stay in it just because they want to be part of the social framework, like they want to be part of the social group. And if you're not partnered, you are excluded from a lot of those communities or a lot of those activities. People don't know how to kind of include you in things as it's not like a third wheel. I'm just another person, you know?
Right.
And
As
so,
I was reading this stuff, I was seeing that like people were being not invited to things because they didn't have a partner.
yeah, yeah, it's
Weird.
fascinating to me because can't we just enjoy each other's company for who we are as a person and not like our social kind of relationship status or like, and that even moves into parenting because that's elevated
Mhm.
um, as something more than if you're not,
Mhm.
which I also find interesting. So, but this has been a lot of unpacking for me too as the years have gone by. Like, why do I want to be in a relationship? Why do I think it's beneficial? Um, what is wrong with being on your own? And I'm finding there's not,
No,
right?
there's
It's like there's
nothing.
so many different ways. And if we look at, relationships, not all of them last, you
Mhm.
know? And so it's even like you can't tell me that marriage is better, there's still pain
Yeah.
in it because
Yeah.
of breakups and changes in those relationships. And so, I don't know, back to your point, like, why did, what was the question again?
No, you're good. Why do you think that we as a society view choosing or being thoughtful before jumping into a marriage as a
Yeah.
negative thing?
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that. I think it just comes maybe from just history, right? Like
Mm,
that is the norm. We also are in a society that, you know, you want to procreate. And so that happens in a lot of relationships, not all the time, but a lot of times that's what they want it to be. And so, yeah, I don't, and I think some people question it because they maybe didn't choose wisely and they know
mhm,
that, you
mhm.
know? And so there might be some judgment that way. I don't know. I don't think there's like one answer or one or two answers. I think there's like a gamut depending on what perspective you're coming from.
Right. And I mean, it can go either way. So there's people who choose to not marry or to be a little bit more choosy before jumping into such a big commitment. And then there's the people from back in the day who were in marriages for 60 plus years. Their partner passes, and then out comes the truth. Well, I was miserable the whole time, and this. I was really only with him because I had all these kids and he was willing to take care of them, and I was suffering. So to me, I go, why would you want to live your life like that? We get one life.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's how you chose to be. And then you want to look at me kind of sideways and weird because I'm not in a relationship.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what
and
I
I
mean?
think too, for me, like what guides my life is I like peace,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so for me to enter into relationship, I want it to be peaceful. Um, and so that means choosing well because
Mhm.
I mean, just observe, you see how hard marriage is, right? You
Mhm.
see how hard raising children is. And so it's like, why wouldn't you go into that eyes wide open so that you can do your best at it?
Mhm.
Um, because it doesn't just affect you, you know,
Yeah.
affect you, the person you're with, and everybody else in your family. So
Yeah,
it's
and then if you choose to make children with them, that it affects them as well. It gives them
right,
a skewed view of what relationship is.
right, right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel pressured by well-meaning friends and family to date or find a date? Do people pressure you a bunch?
I think it's lessened as the I've aged. Yeah, I mean, I think people, you know, they want to be supportive and, you know, and I appreciate friends that set me up with people that they know because I feel like that's how I've wanted to meet people is more like through other people because they know me, they know this other person, they can kind of see if that would be a good fit.
Mhm.
And I know like people have said to me in the past, well, if you get married earlier, then it's just easier to grow together and you're not so set in your ways. I see that. That's a
Yeah.
very valid um, kind of argument. But I also do see the benefits of getting married older as well. So it's
Mhm.
like there's not just one way to do it.
Mhm.
Because I can look at people that got married really young and be like, wow, you never got to experience like the independence of living on your own and the growth that comes from that. And
Mhm.
you're not always dependent on somebody else, you know? So, like, I think
Yeah.
not one's not better than the other, it's just different.
Right. Right. And I don't know why in today's world it seems that people think their way is the way. And so they have a hard time seeing it from another perspective. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there are pros to marriage, but there are also pros to being single as well. I
Yeah.
mean, I would much rather be single than, like you said, be in an upheaval of a relationship or in constant strife. I like peace as well. Sometimes
Yeah.
you, two people can't make that happen because their energies just don't mix.
Right. Right. And it, yeah, I agree. It's just,
So share with us one of your worst experiences during dating.
oh, I think it's just the I guess the disappointment that comes from it, like when you're dating, you're hopeful that something will come out of it. And
Mhm.
so, especially as you get older and extinct, like singleness extends, I think it just becomes a little bit more frustrating as in a whole. Like I can't think of one specific thing. Um, I mean, I can think of one relationship that I thought it was going to be the one, but because, communication wasn't there how I expected it to be, or yeah, like that pretty much was what it
That's
boiled
pretty
down
much
to.
it.
That's disappointing, because you're like, but we have all these other things in common, but you're not leading the way with that communication. But then I also reflect on myself. It's like, but you weren't also asking for that as well. And so it's just like, that's a growth area for me throughout the
Mhm.
years is asking for what you need, and working through that with somebody else. So I think those are some of the biggest disappointments because I don't think personality wise, I'm like that so romantic, like, it needs to be all these things. I'm more maybe practical of like, it's
Mm.
not always going to be butterflies and rainbows. It's going to be hard. And so you need to like
Yeah.
look at that day in and day out. Can you partner with somebody to make life go as smoothly as possible?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm always a list maker when I'm in a relationship.
Mm,
Like if the good is outweighing the bad, we're good. But when once that list starts going up on the wrong side, then gotta cut
yeah.
ties.
Yeah.
So, ask a younger version of yourself, what did you expect your love life or your family life to look like?
Mm. I think I expected it to look like what I saw around me, right?
Mhm.
Like my parents got married in college, my older brother did. A lot of my friends left college engaged. And so like you just kind of think that's how it plays out. And when that didn't happen, then 27 was on my mind. Like, okay, I'm going to meet somebody then because that's a great age. You've kind of lived on your own, but now you're ready to move into a relationship and start a family. And so that's the picture I had in my head. And then as you journey on into your 30s and that's not happening, and now my 40s, it's like, okay, how did how do you unpack that and how do you accept that and how do you um kind of reimagine how your life can be and be thankful for the opportunities that you have had, because of just living your life day by day, choice by choice, the best that you could. Like we can
Yeah.
only look back on hindsight and be like, oh, I wish I would have done that better, or, because you've
Yeah.
learned from it, but if you really trust that you're doing your best each step of the way, then we can
Yeah.
kind of give ourselves grace for that and be like,
Mhm.
no, I was doing the best I could at that given time. So,
Yeah. And I mean,
mhm,
you've had a pretty exciting life. It sounds like you've been a lot of places. So
mhm,
that's,
yeah,
to me, that's a plus.
yeah.
What are some of the pressures you've been faced with being single?
I think the pressures of just like, where do I fit in? Right? Like,
Mhm.
even in my family, that's all coupled with kids, in church communities, like they might have young adults groups or young professionals, but nothing for middle aged, not married, not kids.
Mhm.
So you kind of get pushed out that way. I feel like, um, even in just social circles, right? Like, again, going back to like somebody has a couple's dinner, do they ever think to add some single friends to that, or is it only couples?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I feel like those are some of the harder things that come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody ever like make snide comments? Like does your when you're at a family function, do your family go, "Oh, and we're waiting for you to."
No, no, thankfully I haven't had that. I think
That's
it's more
good.
these right now situations when you meet somebody new and they find out you're single and then they figure out your age and they're like, "What? Like, it's some kind of I don't know, it's just like, I don't like those responses, and I don't know how we change that, you know?
Yeah. And well, and
I
it,
just
the wheels are turning and they're like, well, what's wrong with her then? Right?
Exactly, and I used to
Yeah.
have those thoughts as well growing up, so I totally get it, and that's, I guess, the narrative I wanna change in our society. It's like,
Yeah.
what if nothing is wrong? What if something is just right, you know?
Yeah.
Because, um, I didn't settle, I didn't give in to social pressure,
Yeah.
and I'm not sad for being in a relationship that isn't nurturing my soul, you
Yeah.
know? So I remember being in my 20s and being with a friend that had just gotten married not too long ago, and she's just like, I feel so lonely. And that really impacted me. And I know that we go through seasons of loneliness inside and outside of relationships, but that really touched me at that age of just like, I don't want to be in a relationship and be lonely,
Right. And
you
that's
know?
actually, it's harder to deal with being lonely inside of a relationship or feeling like you're a single mother when you're married than being a single
Mhm.
mother or being single.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think totally smart. Girl, I
Yep.
should have known you a long time ago. I would have saved myself 2 divorces. Seriously. Because I fell into the, oh, I have to get married. I have to have kids young. Well, it was not the brightest idea. I was getting into these marriages for the wrong reasons, having
Mhm.
kids, then going through divorce. And so,
Yeah.
it's just, I've now at
Yeah.
45 decided, okay, that's enough. We're not doing any of that anymore. I'm just going to learn who I am and be good with that,
Mhm.
you know?
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's hard either way,
Yeah.
right? It's hard
Yeah.
not having a relationship, it's hard being in relationships, it's also can be beautiful on either side. So,
Mhm.
I just would like to see the judgments go away with
Yeah. Because
relationship and kids.
reading about your subject, I didn't realize there's such a large community and then there's such a large bunch of stigmas that go along with people who choose to be single because there are some that just choose it. That's what they want to
Mhm.
do. That's it.
Right.
And the things that I read, I was like, holy crap. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
it's a lot.
Like, it's a lot. So I'm like seeing it from a whole nother side because being a divorcee, you get those comments. And then being a
Mhm.
single mom, you get those comments. And so to see it from a side of people, to me, making right choices, making good choices, not jumping in, making sure everything is right, what is wrong with that? But
Mhm.
somehow or another, as a society, they have managed to find things to pick on people about in that
Right.
decision.
Yeah.
So, what does your journey to have kids look like? Do you want to have children?
Um, that's interesting because I always thought I would. Um, and now I'm kinda like and I've gone through a big grief journey with coming like, I don't wanna do it on my own. I always thought I would adopt and,
Right.
thought about it at different times throughout the years. I did foster care to see if that would be feasible. And what I found through that was just financially in the support circle that I feel like I would need to do a good job parenting, it just wasn't there.
Right.
And so that's been a big loss and a big
Yeah.
heartbreak. But now, like, I think as an age, I'm kinda like, "Would I even wanna take that on now?" So I think
Yeah.
it's shifting, which I'm thankful for, so I consider myself childless not by choice and part of that community, but I also feel like I'm moving to a space of being more child-free.
Right.
Um, and so there is kind of that continuum in that thing, like, the real darkness of not having that, kind of dream fulfilled or that desire fulfilled to
Right.
then releasing that so that you can continue on life and um, live more free and create like a new um, vision for your life, as you move
Mm-hmm.
forward, you know? So yeah, it's been very eye-opening, a lot of deep work to
Yeah.
unpack everything. Like, did I really want, because then you start to question yourself because there's different thought out there like, well, if you really wanted it, you would have made it happen, but then I think as a teacher, I really got to see what a big responsibility raising a child is, even, just being observant. I've
Mm-hmm.
always been around kids kind of thing. And so I knew that I didn't go into it lightly because
Yeah.
I saw the heartbreak and stuff like that. And so, um, yeah. So then, yeah, sorry, it's kind of all over
No,
the place, but it's like
it's okay.
unpacking all these things because it's like, did I really want them? If you really wanted them, you would have made it happen, like that kind of thinking. And then just age being a factor.
When you said you like grieved the loss of not having children, did that come on suddenly? Did something trigger that, or was this just you kind of reflecting back?
I've been trying to remember like what sparked it, and I think it was like a slow thing because then as I was into it and getting more language to what that really, like, what am I really experiencing? It's like small griefs
Mhm.
throughout life, right? Because if you expect to be married at a certain age, if you expect to have kids at a certain age, you're watching everybody else kind of hit these milestones that are kind of put in place. Those are small griefs that you don't really acknowledge as grief. You just
Mhm.
like, oh, just feel sad or whatever. But doing some work, I realized like, no, there are small griefs along the way. But this one was really just like, I didn't know it was possible to grieve something that you never had.
Right.
Um, and so it's really been unpacking like it's that expectation you're grieving, um, of what you life would, turn out like. It was, and that's, I think, where people don't get it because it's more disenfranchised grief. So it's like a grief that people don't see. Like they understand death of a person,
Right.
right? Like that makes sense. And even our society doesn't do well with that kind of grief either.
Yeah, I know.
Um, and so you add in these other kind of areas that are real emotions and wanderings that people are going through. It's been, really eye opening for me. And it has been, I think, a slow grow, really in the heart of it, finding different groups and organizations, people that are also experiencing it that help me
Mhm.
put words to how I'm feeling, make me feel not so different and alone in it.
Yeah.
Um, that's really helped me move through it.
Yeah. So are you finding good community of people that are going through the same kind of things like you are?
Yeah, and I don't even know how I came across it because who would have known, like, childless not by choice, like, how do you
Right.
search that? But for whatever reason, I found something, and Jody Day is kind of like a thought leader in this area and Gateway Women. So that is how I got connected to people also walking this road. And there's so many ways to get to this place.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
a lot of the talk is IVF, infertility. We don't always share those stories about IVF that doesn't work, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And so even in that space, you have to find like I don't always fit in that group either, but I have found other just some people call it social infertility. It's just I just haven't met a partner to have kids with, and I choose not to do it on my own because of whatever reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I had the intact family, married for a while with my kids. Then I did the single mom route. And I'll tell you what, my kids, have told me some of the scars that they carry from me being single and their father not being around. So that's a lot that you're putting on a kid too. So it's like either which way
Hmm.
you go, it's
Yeah.
there's some sort of trauma or damage that's going to happen
Yep.
from
Yeah.
our choices. Have you considered maybe freezing your eggs and that way if you do in the future ever find someone, you can either implant them or get a surrogate.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about doing that, or is that something that you're just not?
I feel like I'm part of that age group that it wasn't talked about. So we're past that kind of time that would be feasible, right? Because freezing eggs, you should do that early. Earlier the better.
Well, I don't know.
So nobody.
I saw a
Yeah.
girl who was in her late 40s, and her eggs, they said, were the eggs of a 28-year-old.
Yeah. So I guess,
So,
yeah. Yeah, and I did think about that when it was brought to my attention. But
mhm.
again, it's like to go through all that time, energy, money,
Yeah, money for real.
right? Um, because I know a lot of people, leave with a huge amount of debt trying to have a baby. And so
Yeah.
I really had to like, have that talk with myself. Like, how desperate are you to bring a child into the world? And since adoption's always been on my heart, like I was like, yeah, I don't like I'm sad that I don't get that experience as a woman, but I didn't feel like I needed to put that much on the line for
Yeah.
that experience. Like
Yeah.
there's other kids. So I mean, it's a loss, but it's something that I had to weigh out myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you date, do you mind if people have children going into a relationship?
Yeah, and this has been changes too, like as I go through and as I get older. I was always kind of open to it, but now I think it would just have to be the right
Yeah.
kind of situation because I mean, I have friends that have married with kids in the picture and it's hard.
It is.
I have friends that have made it work and it's a
Mhm.
beautiful story, so I
Yeah,
think
so
it
it's
just
one of
there's so many
these.
factors.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would just have to kind of look at it if it came across my path
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and kinda go with what your gut says, because it sounds like your
Yeah.
gut tells you to do the right things. You know what I mean?
I yeah, try my best and like again, we only can look back and
I
maybe
mean,
see a little regret there, but then I have to trust that I've always
yeah,
been doing the best for myself.
exactly, because I feel like, if it was meant to be, it would be, right? That's the way I feel about it. Like, if that person was meant for you, those marks would have been met on both sides, and it would have
Mm,
happened. So, you just haven't found that yet, not to say
yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And plus I never really believed in luck much, but I believe that sometimes it is just luck that
Yeah.
you meet somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Hope is not lost.
yeah. Yeah, definitely.
How have you been coping as the years go by and you're not in that family unit? So how do you cope with that? Do you just kind of don't think about it, or
Yeah. So some years not coped really well. Like when I was in the deep grief of it, like everything was just so hurtful. Um, but I also feel like I can see the other side of it. And like, to be honest, some days it was really hard to be grateful for the life I've had, especially like before this, I was saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good my life is. Like, it's more than I could ever imagine. And then
Mhm.
to hit the deep grief of it and then have to really fight for that gratitude again or what I do have going for me.
Mhm.
Um, so like before I hit the darkest moments, like I had done that life purpose work. I knew what my purpose was. I knew where I was going. And then when it hits you, you're like, ooh, question everything again. But at least I knew like holding on to hope was always a thing. Like it will get better. It's not going to be forever. Kind of like I really lean in to feel your feels, like
Yeah.
it's okay to cry. It's okay to express yourself, even if people won't understand or they'll come back at you with what sometimes just stupid things, it's just like stuff that we hear, but we don't really think about what we're really
Yeah.
saying. And
Yeah.
I think that's just part of learning. So trying to have grace for people as much as possible, or just taking it and then go venting to people that understand it, like that's,
Yeah.
I think, a thing too. But yeah, coping has looked different. I am at a place where I'm more excited for the future, and I've always seen possibilities. But even more now, just like, okay, so I do have the freedom to, and I know families that travel too, right? Like, again, you can do anything no matter what your situation is, um, as far as like trying to live a better life, given what you've been given to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like that I can choose where I want to live next, or put out
Yeah.
there, like, I don't know where I'm going next. And so let's see. Or maybe some time to do things, the quiet,
Mm-hmm.
um, which sometimes can be a lot. but
But
but yeah,
sometimes it's well needed.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So
yeah.
I think it's just kind of what we all go through.
Yeah. What advice can you give to anyone who may be facing the same realization that they don't have children because of not finding a suitable partner?
I guess I want to encourage people that there's nothing wrong with you. Um, you're not weird. You're not, you
No.
know, like nothing is wrong with you. Um, and that there is beauty to be found in a world without what you expected, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like,
Mhm.
there's still, like, you still have a purpose. You still have opportunity to kind of design a life, even though it will look completely different from the picture in your head, but you can still, paint a picture. So to never give up on that
Mhm.
when it is hard, and it's not overnight, that progression of building a life again, because part of mine was coming back from debt again, right?
Mhm.
Like, upset in career. So I had that added layer, and like the shame that I put on myself for that, when I'm just like, life. Life just
Yeah.
happens
I'm
sometimes, and you
lifing.
have to, yeah, and you just have to come back from it
Mhm.
and do your best with the lessons that you've learned along the way, and lean into the hard, so that you can come out with a lighter load, as far
Yeah.
as releasing stuff and finding peace within it.
Yeah. Let's talk about ways people can cope with the negative emotions or the judgment surrounding being single. So when people are out and those well-meaning, and this is the air quotes, well-meaning comments, and you probably have heard them yourself, get thrown at them. How can they cope with that without being like,
Yeah.
I'm not
It
weird?
I think if you're at a place where you can have some comeback things, like, they're coming, or what the top 5 hot ones are that people go to. So if you can just take time and think through, like, what a comeback would be. I feel like I'm not that witty, but
Mhm.
if you can learn from some other people, I'm sure you can Google it online, like, comebacks that people have when people say these things. Or I don't know, like a visualization of like a shield, and it just ding, it bounces off, like, just
Yeah.
not be bothered by it. They just are saying what they know, right?
Yeah.
If you feel like you're in a place where you can educate them, then you can do that as well. Like, hey, this is how my life has turned out, and there's been hard stuff in it, but it's also been beautiful too. And so I think giving them a picture, like, you're not just sulking, you know,
Yeah.
at home and being sad. Like, I feel like that's kind of what media portrays, is, some of those tropes and stuff. And you're just like, well, that's not my life. So I think painting a new picture for people, if you're able to, when you're in a
Yeah.
good space. But yeah, when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard.
Yeah, I
And
can
so it's
imagine.
just walking away and crying if you need to, venting, so that you can get to a place where you feel stronger.
Yeah. And maybe we can get to a point where we can convince people that you don't need, it's not the ark, it's not Noah's Ark. We don't need 2 by 2. You can
Right.
invite single people.
Yeah. Yep.
Or
Yeah.
tell
I
them to
mean,
bring a friend, but don't make it weird, you know? I mean, I
yeah.
don't know where that comes from that we can't just be at a party, all of us together, couples and singles, and it just be people at a party.
Right. Well, because you're more than just your relationship status. You know,
Yeah.
like there's so much depth to people. And even with when you're partnered, I would assume that you both have different thoughts on different things. And
Mhm.
so, can we lean into having some more of those conversations?
Mhm.
Um, and the individuality that we still have, single, partnered, whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like in some cases for myself, people, because I've moved around a lot. So when I come to a new area and I'm partnered with someone, I am then defined by that person. But now that I'm not partnered with them, they look at me like, but you liked me when I was with this person, but now that I'm
Yeah.
single, you don't know how to deal with me. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And we don't really know each other over a superficial level. You
Mhm.
knew me as his trophy on his arm or his, because I was always
Yeah.
quiet, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think that people don't realize that you really do seem to define individuals by who they're partnered with, and that is not right.
No. No. I think we can go deeper. I think like that's an easy entry, but I
Mhm,
think it's I don't know. To me, it's not good enough. You know,
mhm,
like there's so much more that we have to talk about, to acknowledge people for. It's
mhm.
easy. Well, maybe I should take that back. I don't think it's easy to find. I think potentially it is easy to find somebody depending on where you're at,
Mhm,
but to have like good relationship and stuff, that's hard work,
mhm,
you know? And I admire people that, you know, have done it, right?
mhm.
Because I hear, I don't know, it is a reflection. It's a mirror. You get to see yourself in a whole different way. And so I think that's what community can do for us, partnered or not. Like
Mhm.
we can we can have friendships that reflect back to us so that we can continue to grow and change and just progress forward as a community and not just in our own little bubble.
Absolutely. 100%. Do you offer any programs or are you working on any for people that are going through a tough time surrounding being single?
Well, with my coaching, I offer one-on-one because I feel like that's kind of, especially if you're just diving into this work, sometimes it's hard to show up, you know, with a
Mhm.
lot of this heaviness. And so just kind of being seen in a place. And I know each situation's different, but I also feel like through my experience, I've learned how to hold the space for people just to process, not to try to fix it, because
Right.
sometimes it doesn't need to be fixed, it just needs to be felt. And so, um, yeah, so that's kinda where I meet people at is one-on-one,
Yeah.
in those situations. Yeah,
Yeah. Cuz I mean,
but there's
I
a lot of other groups on Facebook and stuff that you can join.
yeah, cuz I think that that is our go-to also. I have a problem. I come to you to talk about it and people want to go, "Oh, well, here's how you fix it." But really,
Mhm,
there isn't a fix for all.
mhm,
Sometimes people
yeah.
just need to talk it out. Get it off their chest.
Yeah, and I guess that would be the fix, right? Because
Yeah.
I guess, in language, right? We think a fix is an automatic change, but I also feel like a lot of this journey is slow changes over time,
Mhm.
and it's not a quick fix. You will probably feel better. And then you'll have, like, I just had one, different things started to add up, maybe seeing something on social media, talking with a friend or two, and then makes you question again. So then you have to process through that. So I don't want to give anybody the false thing, like it's a one and done, you'll figure it
Right.
out and you'll move on. because the grief that we carry is with us forever, and it's going
Yeah.
to change as we grow and stuff. And so I think just having a space that you can process it. And I feel like that's what coaching does, is allows that kind of place to reimagine what life could be in a land of heartache. Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to redefine and reimagine your life in a positive way?
I think it's just unpacking all those things that, where did you think like you want to be in a relationship? Unpacking that. How would it look if you didn't? Just taking off, I guess, all those social pressures. Um, and it is becoming like confident within, of just like, I am complete and whole just as myself. If I come to a relationship, awesome. But if not, I can still live a joyful life, have
Mm-hmm.
experiences, maybe not all that I wanted, but I can still have a great life. And so I think just reframing what is happening and how you got here is, I think, the best place to do, because I know in my past I've let it mull, because I think a lot. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
overthinker. And so I just let it mull in my head and maybe spin too much. And so I think it's what I've found the most helpful is reframing some of those thoughts and um, putting it in a more positive light, not toxic positivity kind of thing, but
Yeah.
just in a way that feels true and authentic to me, that I can
Yeah.
move forward with. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think that we can do as a society to stop putting so much stigma on other people's choices?
I think just realizing like different is okay. Like we
Yeah.
don't need to be afraid of the different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's been my biggest thing that I would want to see. And just like what works for you doesn't work for everybody, you
Yeah.
know? And so not putting um your experience onto somebody else. You
Yeah.
might have some touch points that are similar, but also realizing like we are each unique and different.
Yeah.
And then just having a lot more empathy, right? So understanding like if this is happening, there might be a reason for that, and so
Mm-hmm.
coming to people with kindness instead of judgment. And
Yeah. I think empathy is the hugest. I think
yeah,
that we have lost empathy in
yep,
a huge way,
yep,
especially
I agree.
recently. I think
Yeah.
that if people kind of could embrace people's choices to do whatever it is,
Hmm.
and with empathy, there would be a lot less conflict. I find
Yes.
myself in groups of people who are like roaring at me. This is what you should do because this is what I do and it works for me. And if you say
Hmm.
to them, but that doesn't work for me, they get a little huffy and go, well, I'm not like you. Well, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
we're individuals. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I totally, because I'm a creative, right? So we're already not fitting the mold
Yeah.
of how we process, how we see the world, how we exchange ideas. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think we come to it with more empathy because we are kind of always on the outs, because our world is not built for us, really.
Right.
And so we're always having to navigate this unique space. And then um, add on to that being single and childless, it's
Mm-hmm.
been an interesting road for sure.
Yeah. How do you feel being single as a woman is viewed differently than being single as a man? So,
Mm,
being single as a man, you're a bachelor. It's a good thing.
yeah.
Being single as a
Yeah.
woman, you're a spinster. What
Yep.
do you,
Yeah.
what do you think of that?
I think it's it's kind of typical for the culture that we live in. It's unfortunate because it's not true,
Right.
you know? Like there has been so much that single women have brought to the world. over time, but like, and I don't do a lot of history, but I've read certain situations where it's like there's been a single smart woman but her ideas are jacked by this guy, and so she's not
Mhm.
getting credit, right? And
Mhm.
so I think just even those kind of situations aren't helping that narrative. And
Yeah.
so I think we're seeing it change because more people are speaking out about it, which I think is awesome. Um, I'd be like, that's not true. Like, just
Yeah.
because you like cats doesn't mean you're an old fat cat woman. But that's
Yes.
unpacking so many narratives in books, fairy tales, movies,
Mhm.
um, just everything. And so I'm glad that people are actually speaking to that and unpacking those.
Yeah.
So,
What can we do raising our kids to make it different in the future for them? How do we teach our children that just because you have this DNA versus this DNA, in the same situation, it should not be different?
mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Well,
I guess
yeah,
gender. I don't want to say gender, but because a man is single, he's a bachelor, he's revered, slap on the back. Because I'm a single woman, I'm a spinster. And it
right.
sounds like I have 20 cats and I crochet and I don't have a life. How do we
Yeah,
teach our children to not fall into that belief system?
I know. And I've thought about this too, even just how I interact and what I ask my nieces and nephews. Like I don't want to ask them, do you have a boyfriend or do you have a girlfriend?
Yeah.
None of my business. If they want to share that with me, awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I feel like those questions add value or add the wrong value to that, and it plants
Yep.
those seeds that, why aren't you? Why,
Yeah.
And so I think those kind of discussions aren't helpful. I think yeah, just really not putting anything on anybody, and letting them change and grow too,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what life is. Like, I hope we're changing and growing until the day we die. Like,
And that's what we're
um,
here to do. That's my
yeah,
my perspective anyway, is I'm here to learn until I'm dead.
yeah, yeah. And so I think not putting any definites on people, as far as, like if we are talking gender. And I think that's something too that I have to learn, um, because we do live in a gendered society. And even I'm learning from different people what that
Mhm.
looks like when gender is not a thing for
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
And so I don't have a lot to say to that, just because I identify as a woman.
Right.
But I think there's plenty of people out there that can really offer some helpful insights into how we support kids
Yeah.
growing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and how we can stop putting those stigmas that keep continuing since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have not found written word that says one gender is superior over another.
Mhm.
That wasn't
Yeah.
written, you know what I mean? That was in the rule book of this world. I did not find that that means I rule you and that's it. And I make more
Right.
money than you, or I can be single and you can't because you're weird if you are. you know,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, but I would like to see us make that change for the future because we're in 2022 and
Yeah.
we're accepting to so much, but we have a hard time accepting some of these easy small things that are easy to accept.
Yeah. Well, and because I think it's we want to be comfortable. We want to kind of know what's happening around us. And when something different comes into that, it upsets that kind
Yeah.
of space, because then it makes you question maybe what you've learned. And that's what I feel like this season is. It's this unpacking of, well, why do I think that way? Where did
Mhm.
I get that thought?
Mhm.
Okay, let me lean into somebody that doesn't have the same thought as I do. Where are they coming from, right? It's that
Mhm.
empathy piece. Seeing
Yep.
another point of view and being able to hold that as you still hold firm in your own ideals, you know,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
fighting about it,
Yeah.
just yeah. And so um I think a lot of grace along the way because we're all not going to get it right.
Yeah.
We're going to stick our foot in our mouth because I think yeah, we just all have our ideas, and when
Yeah.
something new is brought into the view, we have to figure out how that fits for us.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I mean, I'm one of those people that I hear it out. I may not agree, but I want to hear it out. I want to ask questions. I want to learn.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
maybe my mind gets changed. And that's how acceptance happens is hearing
right.
people out and listening to their side, not trying to change their mind
Mhm.
and learning
Yeah.
something.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's for me what living in other cultures has really taught me, like, we can move to a place and you're like, "Ooh, they eat that?" Like, so weird, you know, like going to a market the other day, but it's just like, yeah, so what?
Mhm.
Like,
It's
just because it's
normal to
different
them. Yeah.
yeah, and so don't put judgment on it just because of how people have grown up differently, and I think that's kinda what one of the benefits of social media, that we do get exposure to many different ways of life now, and
Mhm.
so that it is maybe becoming more normalized or acceptable because it is more seen and not so
Yeah.
hidden, and so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a perk.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard the term self-partnered?
I feel like I have, but I don't know much about it.
So in reading all about like the stigmas of being single and what people have been going through, there are a group of people that consider themselves self-partnered, which means they're partnered with self and that is it.
Mm. Mhm.
Done. Is that a more positive way of saying I'm single and it's okay? By saying I'm self-partnered.
Yeah. I think that's, like, what works for you, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that can change over time as well. Because I know there's, like, the single camp, and
Mhm.
then there's, like, the solo camp of, like, really choosing single life, like, intentionally, and then I guess we have self-partnered, and I'm sure there's gonna be a few more that pop up, just because sometimes people like to have words to their experience, and so if that fits for them, awesome,
Mhm.
um,
I'm
but
sometimes I wonder when I hear these terms if it is a way to shut down that noise that they might get. You know, they're
yeah,
trying to say I'm settled in my choice, so I'm self-partnered. That's it.
yeah,
Shut up.
that makes sense, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
'Cause
I'm sure that's where it came from, because be done with it. I
yeah,
think you do get to a point where you're just like, "Enough's enough," and yeah.
exactly. Do you wanna
Mhm.
share anything else?
No, I just really appreciate you taking the time to, for me to share my story and my
Yeah,
experience and stuff like this, and I, hope that, it just makes sure that there is another way of life, and sometimes it's not what you choose, but you can
yeah.
still make a beautiful life out of it, um, through leaning in and doing some really hard work because it is hard.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, I just appreciate this conversation.
Well, I appreciate that you wanted to have it with me, and it's something that I got to learn about now. And
Hmm.
I only read a little bit, but it makes me more intrigued because not just with being single, but with all the other choices that each individual person makes that's good for them, you have these audiences that want to no, 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 and shut it down or make them feel lesser
Hmm.
than. And I think that this is a good way to make that stuff stop.
Right, right. I do too. I think talking about it, I know talking about it is part of my healing journey, right? Like
Mhm.
talking about it because there's nothing wrong with how, like, it's been hard how life has turned out, but there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
And so, yeah, so I just appreciate that
Yeah. And
opportunity.
where can people find you?
Yeah, I hang out on Instagram at a creative purpose. And then you can find me on my website at naomigiedel.com. I do have a podcast, A Creative Purpose, which just kind of shares stories of creatives and how they have built their life and what they're working on. And
Oh,
so that's kind
neat.
of been a fun outlet for me just to, because I, like you, I think stories matter.
Yeah,
And if we can find connection by sharing them, I think it's pretty powerful
that's
to
awesome.
know that we're not alone.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And it is harder for creative people. It really is because people think that
mhm,
they have so many stigmas around that. Oh, so you're
mhm.
lazy.
Yep. And then we start taking that on and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
See, it's a
it's a
never
whole
end.
thing.
It's a whole thing for real. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Naomi.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you liked this and other episodes, please click subscribe, like, and share so others can enjoy them too. Thank you so much for listening.